After complications during childbirth left them unable to have more children, David and Sarah Carter, a compassionate couple from the United States, decided to adopt a teenage boy with dwarfism while on vacation in Indonesia, wanting to give him a chance when no one else would. Despite their good intentions, they couldn't ignore how their normally outgoing 2-year-old daughter, Lily, became unusually withdrawn whenever their new son, Adam, was near. Lily would cling to her mother and cry whenever Adam tried to interact with her. Given Adam's special condition, David and Sarah assumed it would just take time for everyone to adjust and decided to give the children space to get to know each other better. What they didn't realize was that their toddler's instincts were desperately trying to warn them of a horrifying truth, one that would soon reveal the boy's true identity and sinister intentions, explaining exactly why their daughter had been so afraid all along. The scorching Indonesian sun beat down on the small, modest building that housed the Harapan Orphanage on Belitung Island. David and Sarah sat in a humble office with wooden walls adorned with children's drawings and photographs. Their 2-year-old daughter, Lily, squirmed restlessly on Sarah's lap, her golden curls sticking to her forehead in the humid air despite the ceiling fan whirring above them. "Are you absolutely sure about this?" David asked his wife softly, his hand resting on her arm. The couple exchanged a meaningful glance over their daughter's head. Sarah nodded firmly, gently bouncing Lily on her knee to keep her occupied. "Yes, I'm sure. We only have 4 days left of our vacation before heading back to the States. We visited this orphanage for 3 days now, and I've already built a connection with Adam. Despite his special needs, I feel like he belongs with us." David studied his wife's determined expression. At 38, Sarah had the kind of quiet strength that had carried them through difficult times. The scar from her emergency C-section was a constant reminder of the complications that had nearly taken both her and Lily's lives 2 years ago. "And you, David, what do you think?" Sarah returned his question, her eyes searching his. David ran a hand through his hair, considering his words carefully. "I haven't bonded with him as strongly as you have yet, but I can see he's a sincere kid, even with the challenges of being a teenager with dwarfism." He squeezed her hand. "If this is what you want, what you believe we need as a family, I'm with you. You know I've always wanted Lily to have a sibling." The painful memory of Sarah's post-birth complications hung between them. The doctors had been clear, another pregnancy could be fatal. They had tried to adopt in the United States, but Sarah's medical history had resulted in repeated rejections. This opportunity, though unconventional, felt like an answered prayer. Across the desk sat Nissa, the orphanage caretaker, a petite Indonesian woman in her 50s with kind eyes and graying hair pulled back in a neat bun. She adjusted her glasses and offered them a patient smile as they conversed. When they finished, she leaned forward. "Adam, very good boy," she said in her limited English, her accent thick but her meaning clear. "He rescued here 10 months ago. Tourist parents abandoned him. Very sad." She shook her head solemnly. How could anyone abandon their child in a foreign country? Sarah asked, horrified. And was there really no one willing to adopt him here? Nissa gestured with her hands, trying to bridge the language gap. Local families don't want to adopt him. His condition, she indicated a small height with her hand. Many people here think curse, bad luck. She frowned, clearly disagreeing with such superstitions. Also, he not speak local language well. Nobody choose him. That's terrible, David said, his jaw tightening. Adoption not common here, Nissa continued. Some tribes think taboo, especially special needs children. Her face brightened slightly. But Adam always helped, always kind. He good heart. David and Sarah exchanged another look. Sarah's eyes were damp with emotion, and David knew her decision was made. He nodded almost imperceptibly, and they both turned back to the documents laid out before them. With a deep breath, David picked up the pen and signed his name on the dotted line. Sarah did the same, her handwriting delicate but decisive. Nissa beamed at them, clasping her hands together. Thank you, she said earnestly. You good people. Adam very lucky. There's one thing that concerns me. Nissa, David cleared his throat. We're heading back to the United States soon. What about his documentation, his passport, to pass the airport security? Nissa nodded understandingly. Because he abandoned by tourists, no birth certificate, no formal papers. She leaned in, lowering her voice slightly. But no worry. Orphanage, give guardian letter. I help with airport officials. You call me day of departure. I'll make sure no problems. David and Sarah exchanged concerned glances, but Nissa's confident demeanor somewhat reassured them. We'll sort out the formal adoption process once we're back home, Sarah said, bouncing Lily gently on her knee. The toddler gurgled happily, oblivious to the life-changing moment unfolding around her. Look, Lily, Sarah cooed. You're going to have a big brother soon. Someone to look after you and play with you. Lily focused on the colorful bracelet on her mother's wrist, merely babbled in response. David reached into his pocket and pulled out his checkbook. With careful deliberation, he wrote a check for a substantial amount. This is for the orphanage, he said, handing it to Nissa. I know it's not much in US dollars, but hopefully it can help with repairs and supplies for the other children. Nissa's eyes widened as she accepted the check, clearly moved by the gesture. So generous. Thank you. This helped many children. We wanted to adopt a child with special needs, David explained, someone who might have fewer opportunities otherwise. I wish more people think like you, Nissa said sincerely. Now please wait. I go get Adam. She rose from her chair and exited the room, leaving David and Sarah alone with Lily. Sarah looked around at the photographs on the walls, children of various ages, most with visible disabilities, smiling despite their circumstances. It must be so hard for Adam, she whispered, being so different from everyone else here, especially at his age. David nodded grimly. What kind of parents would abandon their child in a foreign country? It's unthinkable. Sarah reached out, touching his arm gently. We're going to give him the life he deserves, David. It might be challenging at first, but I think he'll adjust more easily once we're back in the States, where there's better support for people with his condition. David covered her hand with his own, his eyes reflecting the mixture of hope and apprehension they both felt about the path they had chosen. The door creaked open, and Nissa returned with a small figure by her side. Adam stepped into the room, his movements careful and measured. Standing at just over 4 feet tall, he had the stature of a young child, but his face, though youthful, held an unexpected complexity. His large eyes were deep and expressive, his features delicate, but somehow not entirely childlike despite the baby-faced appearance typical of his condition. Adam, Nissa said gently, placing a hand on his shoulder. These are the Carters. They want to be your family. Adam looked up at David and Sarah, a shy smile spreading across his face. There was a moment of hesitation before he spoke. Hello, he said, his voice high-pitched but clear. Are you really going to be my new parents? Sarah immediately rose from her chair, handing Lily to David. Yes, Adam. We would like very much for you to come live with us and be part of our family. Adam's eyes darted between them, a mixture of hope and caution in his gaze. May I hug you? He asked tentatively. Sarah felt a surge of tenderness at his vulnerability. Of course you can, she said, opening her arms. Adam stepped forward and wrapped his arms around Sarah's waist, his head barely reaching her chest. The hug was gentle, almost tentative, but Sarah felt the earnestness in it. When they separated, Adam turned to David, who had risen as well, holding Lily in one arm. Mr. Carter, is it okay to hug you too? Adam asked, his voice small but steady. Absolutely, David replied, crouching down with Lily still in his arms to make it easier for Adam to reach him. The boy embraced him carefully, mindful of the toddler. When he pulled back, Adam's gaze shifted to Lily, who was watching him with wide, curious eyes. This is your little sister, Lily, Sarah explained, smiling encouragingly. May I touch her? Adam asked, his eyes never leaving the toddler. David and Sarah exchanged a quick glance, both impressed by his polite request for permission. Yes, you may, Sarah said. Adam reached out slowly, his fingers barely brushing Lily's soft golden curls. The little girl's face scrunched up, and suddenly she burst into tears, burying her face in her father's shoulder. Adam immediately stepped back, his expression falling. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to scare her. No, it's not your fault, Sarah quickly reassured him, taking Lily from David and gently bouncing her. She's just tired and cranky. The heat here is tough on her, and being in a new place might make her uncomfortable. Adam nodded, but the concern in his eyes remained. I hope she'll like me eventually. I've never had a sister before. She'll adore you once she gets to know you, Sarah said confidently. It just takes children her age a little time to warm up to new people. Adam's smile returned, albeit more hesitant than before. I really look forward to having a family, he said, his voice soft with emotion. I hope I won't disappoint you. Sarah's heart melted at his words. Oh, Adam, you could never disappoint us. We're thrilled to have you join our family. It might take some time for all of us to adjust, David added, placing a reassuring hand on Adam's shoulder, but we're fully committed to making this work. Nissa, who had been watching the interaction quietly, stepped forward and knelt beside Adam. In her limited English, she spoke a few encouraging words to him. You very lucky boy, Adam. Many children here whole life, no family. Take chance like this, not come twice. Be good boy for Carter family. Adam nodded solemnly at her words, then turned to Nissa with genuine gratitude in his eyes. Thank you for everything, Nissa, for taking care of me when nobody else would because of my condition. The exchange touched Sarah deeply. For all his challenges, Adam seemed remarkably well-adjusted and grateful, qualities that confirmed they were making the right decision. Nissa rose and addressed the Carters again. I text you when letter ready. Few hours only. You come back collect. Thank you for everything, Nissa, David said, shaking her hand warmly. With final goodbyes exchanged, David and Sarah led Adam out to their rented car. Lily, now calmer but still watching Adam with wary eyes, settled into the vehicle. Sarah couldn't help but feel a surge of anticipation. Their family of 3 had just become 4, and a new chapter was beginning, one she hoped would bring healing and happiness to all of them, especially the boy who had been left behind by those who should have protected him most. The seaside villa greeted them with the soothing crash of waves against the shore. Nestled among palm trees beneath a brilliant blue sky, the whitewashed building with its thatched roof looked straight out of a vacation brochure. The Carters had splurged on this accommodation, eager to make their holidays special, especially on this island. They never expected they would return home with a new addition to their family. From Bellong, they had planned for international adoption before leaving, but assumed it would happen on a larger island somewhere like Java or Bali. Yet instead, it was this small northern island. Here we are, Adam. Home for the next few days, David said as he parked the rental car in the designated spot. Adam's eyes widened as he took in the beautiful villa and its proximity to the beach. It's beautiful, he breathed, his voice tinged with awe. Sarah smiled at his reaction. Wait until you see inside. They gathered their belongings and made their way to the entrance. The villa was modestly sized but luxurious, with an open-concept living area that flowed onto a veranda overlooking the ocean. Ceiling fans spun lazily overhead, circulating the warm, tropical air. Let me show you to your room, Sarah said, leading Adam down a short hallway. She opened a door to reveal a spacious bedroom with a large window that offered a partial view of the beach. This will be your space. Lily stays in our room since she's still so young. Adam stepped into the room, taking it all in with an expression of wonder. This is all for me, he asked, his voice small. All yours, David confirmed, setting Adam's few belongings beside the bed. We'll need to get you some more clothes and things, but this is your space for now. Thank you, Adam said, his fingers trailing over the crisp bed linens. It's been a long time since I had a room of my own. Sarah felt a pang of sympathy, imagining the crowded conditions at the orphanage. Well, you'll have your own room back in our home in America too, she assured him. They continued the tour, showing Adam the rest of the villa. The kitchen, the shared bathroom, and the veranda where they often had breakfast overlooking the sea. Feel free to make yourself at home, David encouraged. Our house is your house now. Adam nodded, his expression serious. I'll try my best not to overstep. Please correct me if I do something wrong. Don't worry about that, David said easily. We're on vacation, so we should focus on getting to know each other and building our relationship as a family. What are we going to do today? Adam asked, his tone eager but respectful. Sarah and David exchanged glances, realizing they hadn't planned activities with a teenage boy in mind. "We didn't actually have anything specific planned," Sarah admitted. "With this heat and Lily's heat rash acting up, it's been challenging to stay outside for too long." She glanced out the window at the dazzling sunshine beyond, then back at Adam and Lily. "But it's such a beautiful day. How about we go to the villa's beach club? We can relax in the shade while enjoying the scenery and maybe take some family photos, our first as a complete family." "That sounds nice," David agreed, then looked to Adam. "What do you think?" For a brief moment, something flashed across Adam's face, an emotion Sarah couldn't quite identify. Concern, reluctance, but it was gone so quickly she wondered if she'd imagined it. "Is everything okay?" she asked. "We don't have to go if you'd rather not." No, Adam said quickly, his expression brightening. "The beach club sounds good. I haven't been to the beach much before, with the orphanage and stuff." "Then it's settled," Sarah said cheerfully, though she made a mental note of his momentary hesitation. "Let me just get Lily's things ready, and we can head down." As Sarah gathered Lily's beach essentials, hat, sunscreen, extra clothes, and snacks, she found herself observing Adam when he thought no one was looking. There was something in his resting expression that struck her as oddly mature for a 13-year-old. The contours of his face, the shadow of facial hair that seemed a bit advanced for his age. She'd read that dwarfism could affect development in different ways, but it still caught her by surprise. Adam waited patiently by the door while Sarah finished preparing. She noticed how he stood there, oddly still for a teenager, his eyes carefully taking in everything around him. It was as if he was memorizing the layout of the villa, noting every detail. Sarah secured Lily in her baby sling, the toddler's weight comfortable against her body. As she approached the door, she made another mental note. They would need to buy clothes and other necessities for Adam. The few items he had brought from the orphanage wouldn't be sufficient. "Ready?" David asked, keys in hand. Sarah and Adam nodded, and together the newly formed family of four stepped out into the brilliant Indonesian sunshine, making their way along the winding path that led to the beachfront club. The beach club was a large open-air structure with a thatched roof, situated perfectly to catch the cooling ocean breeze. Several tables and lounges were arranged strategically to provide both shade and views of the crystal-clear turquoise waters that lapped against the white sand beach. David led them to a table in a shaded area, the tropical wind gently tousling their hair. As soon as they settled, Lily wriggled out of Sarah's arms and toddled straight for the sandy area just beyond their table. "She certainly knows what she wants," David chuckled, lying back on one of the lounges and pulling out his phone to check emails. Sarah busied herself unpacking Lily's beach bag, arranging her daughter's change of clothes, sunscreen, and snacks on the table. When she looked up, she saw Adam had already followed Lily to the sand and was crouched beside her, his small stature making him appear almost like an older child playing with a younger sibling rather than a teenager with a toddler. "Hello, Lily," Adam was saying gently, his voice carrying on a breeze. "Do you like building sandcastles?" Lily, focused on filling her plastic bucket with sand, didn't respond verbally but cast occasional curious glances his way. Despite the lack of interaction, Adam remained patient, occasionally offering suggestions or praising her efforts. Sarah felt a warm glow of satisfaction watching them. "Look at that," she whispered to David, who glanced up from his phone. "I think we made the right choice. He's so gentle with her." David nodded, a smile softening his features. He seemed like a good kid. Patient, too. Most teenagers would be bored out of their minds, playing with a 2-year-old. Sarah continued watching them for a moment, then noticed a small stand nearby selling fresh coconuts. "I'm going to get some drinks," she announced. "Want one?" "Sounds perfect," David replied, returning his attention to his phone. Sarah approached the coconut stand, where an elderly Indonesian man with deeply lined skin and faded clothes was skillfully chopping the tops off fresh green coconuts with a machete. When she reached the counter, she noticed the old man's gaze wasn't on her, but fixed over her shoulder, following his line of sight. She realized he was staring at Adam. "Hello," Sarah said with a friendly smile. "I'd like to buy some coconuts, please." The man's attention snapped to her, his weathered face unreadable. He pointed toward Adam and said in halting, broken English, "No boy. Man here." Sarah furrowed her brow, not understanding. "That's my son," she explained, gesturing toward Adam, who was still playing with Lily in the sand. The old man shook his head emphatically, his expression urgent. "No boy. Not man here. Not good." Confused by his disjointed words, Sarah tried to decipher what he meant. Was he saying something about Adam's dwarfism? Perhaps the local superstitions Nissa had mentioned? The man continued, pointing to his back and shaking his head vigorously. "Boy, not man here. Not good." Sarah struggled to understand, but the language barrier was too significant. "I just want to buy coconuts for my family," she said clearly, holding up 2 fingers. "2 coconuts, please." The man seemed to give up, his shoulders slumping slightly as he selected 2 green coconuts from his collection. With practiced precision, he sliced off the tops and inserted straws before handing them to Sarah. "Thank you. You can keep the change," she said, paying him and heading back to their table. As she walked, Sarah glanced back and noticed the coconut seller was still watching them. No, not them specifically, Adam. Even more unsettling, when she shifted her gaze to Adam, she caught him looking back at the old man. For a brief, strange moment, it seemed as though they were exchanging some kind of silent communication. "Here we go," Sarah said brightly as she returned to the table, trying to shake off the odd feeling. "Fresh coconut water. Adam, would you like one?" Adam turned away from the sand and approached the table. "Yes, please," he said, but his voice had changed, deeper, more authoritative, and entirely unlike the high-pitched tone he'd been using since they met him. Sarah blinked in surprise. Adam, just as quickly, his expression shifted, and when he spoke again, his voice returned to its previous childlike pitch. "Thank you, Mrs. Carter. It's been a long time since I had fresh coconut." The transition was so swift, so seamless, that Sarah questioned whether she had imagined the momentary change. She handed him the coconut, their fingers brushing briefly. "Is everything okay?" she asked, studying his face. "Yes, of course," Adam replied, his eyes wide and innocent. "Why do you ask?" Sarah hesitated, then lowered her voice. "That man at the coconut stand, do you know him? He was looking at you." "No," Adam said, but his response came too quickly, too forcefully. "I've never seen him before." Something about the interaction felt off, but Sarah couldn't pinpoint exactly what. She glanced back at the coconut stand, where the old man was still watching them intently. "Sarah," David called from his lounger. "Everything all right?" Sarah turned to her husband and lowered her voice. "That coconut seller." He kept staring at Adam and saying something strange, something about no boy, man here. And then Adam's voice changed for a second. It got deeper like an adult's. David sat up, frowning. "What do you mean?" "I don't know exactly," Sarah admitted, feeling slightly foolish. "It was just for a moment. And that old man, he seemed like he was trying to warn me about something." David looked over at the coconut stand, then at Adam, who had returned to playing with Lily. "Remember what Nissa said about local superstitions regarding dwarfism? It's probably just that. The old man might think Adam brings bad luck, or something equally ridiculous." Sarah nodded slowly. "You're right. That must be it." But as she watched Adam, carefully manipulating the sand for Lily's amusement, she couldn't shake the lingering sense of unease. The way the coconut seller had looked at Adam wasn't with fear or superstition, but with recognition. And that voice, that momentary deeper voice, had sounded so different, so distinctly adult. She took a sip of her coconut water, the sweet liquid doing little to wash away the bitter taste of doubt that had suddenly formed in her mouth. By early afternoon, the sun climbed higher in the sky, beating down with an intensity that made even the shaded areas of the beach club uncomfortably warm. After a light lunch of fresh seafood and tropical fruit, David checked his watch and suggested they head back to the villa to escape the worst of the heat. "Before we go back," Sarah said, "I think we should stop by a department store. Adam needs more clothes, and we're running low on diapers for Lily." As if on cue, David's phone rang. He glanced at the screen and held up a finger. "It's Nissa." He stepped away to take the call, and Sarah began gathering their belongings. When David returned a few minutes later, he looked relieved. "Good news. The adoption letter is ready. We can pick it up any time today." Perfect, Sarah said. How about we split up? You can go get the letter, and I'll take Adam and Lily shopping. We can meet up at the department store when you're done. David agreed, and once they were back in the car, he drove them to Bellong's largest shopping center, a modern building that stood out among the island's otherwise traditional architecture. I'll drop you off here, David said, as they pulled up to the entrance. Text me when you're wrapping up, and I'll meet you inside. Sarah nodded, helping Lily out of her car seat while Adam climbed out the other side. With a quick kiss goodbye to her husband, she took Lily's hand and led both children into the cool, air-conditioned interior of the department store. All right, Adam, Sarah said once they were inside. Let's start with getting you some clothes. You can choose whatever you like, t-shirts, shorts, maybe a light cardigan for the evenings. Adam's eyes widened. I can choose myself. Of course, Sarah smiled. They're your clothes, after all. They made their way to the children's section, which, due to Adam's size, would have clothes that fit him better than the teen section. Sarah winced internally at the thought, wondering if it bothered him to shop in an area meant for much younger children. But Adam didn't seem to mind. In fact, he moved through the racks with the confidence of someone who had done this before, selecting items with careful consideration. You have good taste, Sarah remarked as he chose a simple blue t-shirt and khaki shorts. Thank you, Adam replied. I like practical clothes. They continued shopping, filling their cart with necessities for both Adam and Lily. After selecting clothing, they moved to the toiletry section for items like toothpaste, shampoo, and sunscreen. Lily, who had been seated in the shopping cart, began to fuss after about an hour, squirming and making impatient noises. Someone's getting restless, Sarah observed, lifting her daughter out of the cart. Let's let her walk a bit. Hold my hand, Lily. The toddler tottered beside her mother, her little legs still unsteady but determined. For a while, the shopping continued uneventfully, with Adam helping Sarah select items and occasionally entertaining Lily with silly faces or gentle games of peekaboo. By the time they were ready to check out, the cart was full, and Lily was noticeably tired, her steps becoming more uneven, her whines more frequent. Just a little longer, sweetheart, Sarah soothed as they joined the checkout line, which was unfortunately quite long. As they waited, Sarah's phone rang. She fished it out of her purse to see David calling. Hello, she answered. Hey, I've got the letter. David's voice came through. Where are you now? We're in line at the checkout, Sarah replied. There's quite a wait, though. We've got enough clothes and supplies for both kids to last the rest of the trip. Great. Text me your exact location, and I'll come find you. Will do, Sarah said, then hung up and quickly sent David their store location. When she looked up from her phone, she realized with a start that both Adam and Lily were no longer beside her. Panic fluttered in her chest as she scanned the immediate area, seeing no sign of them. Excuse me, she said to the woman behind her in line. Could you hold my place? I need to find my children. Not waiting for a response, Sarah pushed her cart to the side and rushed through the nearest aisles, calling out, Adam, Lily. Minutes passed with no sign of them, and Sarah's heart pounded harder with each passing second. She approached a store employee, describing her children with increasing urgency, but the language barrier made communication difficult. Just as she was about to alert security, she spotted them emerging from between clothing racks near the restroom area. Adam was holding Lily's hand, and the toddler was walking calmly beside him. Relief flooded through Sarah, quickly followed by anger and confusion. She rushed to them, crouching down to Lily's level first to check she was okay, then standing to face Adam. Where were you? She demanded, her voice sharper than intended. I was worried sick. Adam's expression was calm, almost too composed for a child who should have realized the seriousness of disappearing in a crowded store. I'm sorry, Mrs. Carter, he said, his tone placating. Lily needed to use the bathroom, so I took her. Sarah blinked, momentarily speechless. She told you she needed to go to the bathroom? Adam nodded. She was patting her diaper, looking uncomfortable, so I helped her. Sarah stared at him in disbelief. Lily was only 2 years old and still in diapers. She had never once indicated needing to use a toilet, nor had Sarah even begun potty training. Adam, Lily doesn't tell anyone when she needs to go, Sarah said slowly. She's not potty trained yet. She uses her diaper. Adam's expression flickered just for a moment before settling back into innocent confusion. Oh, well, she definitely seemed uncomfortable, so I checked her diaper. It was full, so I changed it. Sarah's eyes widened. You changed her diaper? She automatically checked Lily's diaper through her clothes and was shocked to find it dry and fresh. How did you know how to do that? Adam hesitated briefly before answering. Nissa taught me at the orphanage. I used to help with the younger children there. Sarah stared at him, trying to process this information. It seemed plausible. Orphanages were often understaffed, and older children might be enlisted to help with the younger ones. But something about the situation still felt off. Well, thank you for helping, Sarah said finally, trying to mask her unease. But next time, please tell me before you take Lily anywhere. I was very worried. I'm sorry, Adam said, his eyes downcast. I won't do it again without asking. They made their way back to the checkout line, where thankfully their cart remained untouched. As they waited, Sarah couldn't help but notice that Lily, who usually clung to her mother after any separation, was now oddly quiet, clutching Sarah's legs and refusing to look at or interact with Adam. Is she all right? Adam asked, noticing Lily's behavior. She's just tired, Sarah said automatically, though a nagging doubt told her it might be something more. It's probably past her nap time. When they finally reached the cashier, Sarah kept Lily in her arms, the toddler's head buried against her shoulder. As the items were being scanned, Sarah's mind raced with questions. How did Adam know how to change a diaper so well? Why had Lily suddenly needed changing when she'd been fine just minutes before? And why was her normally sociable daughter now so withdrawn? The more she thought about it, the less sense it made. A 13-year-old boy, especially one with physical limitations, taking a toddler to the bathroom without asking seemed inappropriate at best, concerning at worst. Yet Adam had seemed so matter-of-fact about it, so confident in his actions. Sarah checked her watch and saw it was indeed well past Lily's usual nap time. Perhaps that explained her daughter's unusual behavior. She was simply overtired. As they finished paying and gathered their bags, Sarah caught sight of David entering the store, weaving his way through the crowds toward them. The sight of her husband brought a wave of relief, though she couldn't entirely shake the uncomfortable feeling that something wasn't quite right with their new family dynamic. Back at the villa, David helped unload the shopping bags while Sarah laid Lily down on their bed for her nap. The little girl had fallen asleep during the car ride home, her cheeks flushed with the warmth of the afternoon and the exhaustion of their outing. I think I'll take a walk around the area, David announced after they had sorted through their purchases. There's an art market close by that looked interesting. Do you want to come? Sarah shook her head, glancing at their sleeping daughter. I'd better stay with Lily. You go ahead and enjoy yourself. Adam, who had been quietly unpacking his new clothes in the living room, looked up. I think I'll rest too, if that's okay. It's been an exciting day. Of course, Sarah said. Make yourself at home. If you need anything, just let me know. Adam gathered his new belongings and retreated to his room, closing the door softly behind him. David gave Sarah a quick kiss before heading out, promising not to be gone too long. Alone with her thoughts and her sleeping daughter, Sarah settled on the edge of the bed and pulled out her tablet. The questions that had been swirling in her mind since the department store incident needed answers, and though she knew it might be nothing, she couldn't ignore her instincts. She began searching for information about dwarfism, starting with medical articles that explained the different types, symptoms, and how they affected development. Most of what she read aligned with what she knew about Adam's condition. The disproportionate limbs, the larger head relative to body size, potential health complications. She then moved on to psychological articles about how children with dwarfism navigate a world not designed for them, the challenges they face socially, and the resilience many develop. These readings made her feel a twinge of guilt about her suspicions. Adam had likely faced discrimination and difficulties his entire life. The last thing he needed was more suspicion from his new adoptive mother. Yet, the image of the coconut seller's urgent expression and Adam's momentary change in voice nagged at her. Almost against her better judgment, Sarah found herself typing local beliefs about dwarfism Indonesia into the search bar. The results were a mix of academic papers on folklore and more casual travel blogs discussing superstitions across Southeast Asia. One article in particular caught her eye: mythological beings in Indonesian folklore, dwarfs and spirits. She clicked on it and began reading, learning how in some regions, people with dwarfism were believed to have connections to the spirit world, sometimes feared as harbingers of misfortune or revered as bringers of luck, depending on the specific local tradition. In certain areas, the article explained, dwarfs were associated with deception and trickery, able to change their appearance or voice to mislead others. This particular belief sent a chill down Sarah's spine, recalling the moment at the beach club when Adam's voice had deepened so drastically. "That's ridiculous," she muttered to herself, closing the article. "It's just superstition." But the old coconut seller's words echoed her mind. "No boy. Man here. Not good." Could he have been trying to tell her that Adam wasn't a boy, but a man? That somehow didn't make sense. Adam's stature and features clearly belonged to a child with dwarfism. Yet there was something in the old man's urgent tone that had suggested he wasn't expressing mere superstition, but genuine concern. Sarah set her tablet aside and glanced at Lily, who was sleeping peacefully, her little chest rising and falling in a steady rhythm. She thought about how her daughter had reacted to Adam. The tears when he touched her hair, the clinging to Sarah's legs at the store, the sudden desire to be held after coming back from the supposed bathroom trip. Children often had intuition adults lacked, sensing things that grown-ups, with their rational minds and social conditioning, might overlook. Was Lily trying to tell her something in the only way a 2-year-old could? Sarah shook her head, forcing herself to be reasonable. They had only known Adam for a day. It was natural for there to be an adjustment period, for Lily to be wary of a new person in their lives, for Sarah herself to have moments of doubt about such a significant decision made halfway across the world from home. The adoption letter was legitimate, the orphanage seemed sincere, and Nissa had been nothing but helpful. If there were any real concerns about Adam, surely they would have surfaced during their visits to the orphanage over the past 3 days. As her thoughts continued to chase each other in circles, Sarah's eyelids grew heavy. The gentle sound of the ceiling fan, the distant rhythm of waves breaking on the shore, and the warm, humid air all conspired to lull her into drowsiness. She lay down beside Lily, telling herself she would just rest her eyes for a few minutes. Before she knew it, she had drifted off, her tablet slipping from her fingers onto the bed, her concerns temporarily submerged beneath the waves of sleep. Sarah jolted awake, her heart pounding with a sense of disorientation. Something was wrong. But in the foggy transition from sleep to wakefulness, she couldn't immediately identify what. Then it hit her. Lily was gone. "Lily," she called out, scrambling off the bed. The imprint of her daughter's small body was still visible on the sheets, but the toddler herself was nowhere to be seen. Sarah checked the floor around the bed, thinking perhaps Lily had rolled off during her nap, but found nothing. Panic rising, she rushed out of the bedroom. "Lily!" she called again, louder this time. "Adam!" No response came from the living area or kitchen. Sarah's pulse quickened as she moved toward Adam's closed door. She knocked sharply. "Adam, is Lily with you?" Silence greeted her. She knocked again, more forcefully. "Adam, please answer me." When no reply came, Sarah gripped the doorknob and pushed the door open. The bedroom was empty. The new clothes they had purchased were neatly folded on the bed, but no sign of Adam or Lily. Fear gripped her chest, making it hard to breathe. Where could they be? The villa wasn't large, and there weren't many places a toddler and a boy with dwarfism could hide. Then she heard it, the faint sound of splashing and a child's giggle coming from the bathroom attached to Adam's room. Sarah rushed to the partially closed bathroom door, relief flooding through her, mixed with a new surge of concern. What was Lily doing in Adam's bathroom? She pushed the door open and was greeted by a sight that made her cry out in shock. Lily was in the bathtub, happily splashing in shallow water. Adam was there too, his shirt discarded on the bathroom floor, his upper body bare. "What are you doing?" Sarah half shouted, her voice sharp with fear and confusion. Adam turned, startled by her sudden appearance. He rose quickly from where he had been kneeling beside the tub, and Sarah saw that he was still wearing his pants. "Mrs. Carter," he said, his voice calm despite her obvious distress. "Lily wanted to play in the tub, so I thought it would be okay. I only put in a little water." Sarah stared at him, her mind racing. Adam had taken her daughter from her bed while she slept, brought her to his bathroom, and was bathing her, or at least allowing her to play in water, without permission. The inappropriateness of the situation struck her, regardless of his intentions. "You should have asked me first," she said, trying to keep her voice steady despite her racing heart. "You can't just take her like that." Adam's expression was apologetic, but something about it didn't quite reach his eyes. "I'm sorry." She woke up and was getting fussy. "I thought water play might cheer her up. I didn't want to wake you." Sarah approached the tub, noticing that Lily did indeed seem happy, splashing her hands in the shallow water and giggling. The toddler looked up at her mother with a bright smile, showing no signs of distress. Sarah's emotions warred within her. On one hand, Lily appeared perfectly content and safe. On the other, the scenario felt deeply inappropriate. A boy they barely knew, shirtless, alone with her toddler in a bathroom. Yet as she looked at Adam's innocent expression and Lily's happiness, Sarah began to question her own reaction. Was she being overprotective? After all, they had adopted Adam to be Lily's brother, to form a bond with her. Siblings often bathe together when young, play together without constant parental supervision. Perhaps this was simply the first of many adjustments she would need to make as the mother of two children rather than one. Maybe her instinctive alarm was an overreaction born from years of being solely responsible for Lily's care and safety. "I understand that you were trying to do something nice," Sarah said finally, her tone softer. "But in the future, please ask before you take Lily anywhere, especially when I'm sleeping. It scared me not knowing where she was. Please, you need to remember this." Adam nodded, his expression contrite. "I'm really sorry, Mrs. Carter. I didn't mean to frighten you. This is all new to me, too. In the orphanage, we often helped with the younger children, and I'm used to being independent." He turned to Lily, his voice gentle as he addressed her. "It's time to go, Lily. We've been playing for a while now. We'll play some more later, but you must promise me no crying, okay?" Sarah watched the interaction with mixed emotions. There was undeniable tenderness in the way Adam spoke to Lily, and her daughter seemed to respond positively to him now, unlike earlier at the store. "I'll get her dried off," Sarah said, reaching for a towel from the nearby rack. As she lifted Lily from the tub, water dripping onto the tile floor, she couldn't help but notice how comfortable her daughter seemed in Adam's presence, a stark contrast to her earlier wariness. The sound of the front door opening and closing announced David's return. Sarah wrapped Lily in the towel and carried her out of the bathroom, Adam following behind after retrieving his shirt. David looked up as they emerged from Adam's room, his eyebrows rising in surprise. "What's going on?" "Adam was letting Lily play in the bathtub," Sarah explained, trying to keep her tone neutral. "I fell asleep, and when I woke up they were in here." David's expression shifted from surprise to a pleased smile. "I knew they'd be a match," he said, approaching to ruffle Lily's damp hair. "Our little water baby has always loved splashing around." His easy acceptance of the situation helped further soothe Sarah's concerns. She was probably overthinking things, letting her protective instincts override rational thought. "We should start getting ready for dinner," David continued, checking his watch. "If we want to catch the sunset and get a good table, we need to head out soon. The outdoor seating at that beachfront restaurant fills up quickly." Sarah nodded, deciding to let the bathroom incident go. After all, no harm had been done, and if she wanted their newly expanded family to work, she needed to allow Adam and Lily to develop their relationship without her hovering anxiously over every interaction. As she carried Lily to their room to get her dressed, Sarah cast one last glance back at Adam, who was slipping his shirt back on. In the brief moment before he noticed her looking, she caught a glimpse of an expression on his face that didn't match his previous gentle demeanor. Something calculating, almost satisfied. But when he turned and met her gaze, his features instantly rearranged into the innocent smile she had come to expect. Sarah turned away, telling herself it was just a trick of the light, a momentary misinterpretation of his expression. Yet as she helped Lily into a fresh dress, a small voice in the back of her mind whispered that perhaps her instincts weren't overreacting after all. The beachfront restaurant glowed with warm ambient lighting as the sun began its descent toward the horizon, painting the sky in breathtaking shades of orange, pink, and purple. The Carters were seated at an outdoor table with a perfect view of the ocean, the gentle sound of waves providing a soothing soundtrack to their dinner. Sarah noticed that the restaurant was connected to the same beach club they had visited that morning, though now transformed by evening lighting and a more sophisticated atmosphere. She scanned the area and saw that the coconut stand where the old man had tried to warn her was still there, but appeared to be closing for the day, the vendor nowhere in sight. A server approached to take their orders, and David, who had researched local cuisine, made recommendations for dishes they might all enjoy. Throughout the ordering process, Sarah noticed how attentive Adam was to Lily, helping her color on the children's menu with crayons provided by the restaurant and ensuring she had her sippy cup within reach. "You're really good with her," Sarah commented, trying to set aside her earlier misgivings. Adam smiled, a picture of youthful innocence. "I like taking care of her. It makes me feel needed." His words touched Sarah's heart. Of course, a child who had been abandoned by his birth parents would crave a sense of purpose and belonging. Perhaps his eagerness to bond with Lily stemmed from his own deep-seated need to secure his place in their family. As the sky's colors deepened and the sun began to dip below the horizon line, David reached across the table and took Sarah's hand. "It's beautiful, isn't it?" he said, nodding toward the sunset. "We should get a photo of just the two of us with that backdrop. It's not often we get moments like this." Sarah hesitated, glancing at the children. "I don't know if we should leave them alone." "It'll just be for a minute," David assured her, squeezing her hand. "We'll be right over there, still in sight. Adam can look after Lily for a short while." Sarah looked to Adam, who nodded encouragingly. "Don't worry, Mrs. Carter. We'll be fine right here. When you get back, I'll keep a close eye on Lily." Sarah was still uncertain, but David's enthusiasm and Adam's reassurance eventually convinced her. After all, they would be just a short distance away, within sight of the table, and only gone for a few minutes. "All right," she conceded. "We won't be long." "Take your time," Adam said. "Enjoy the sunset. It's a special moment." David led Sarah toward the shoreline, where the receding sun cast long, golden rays across the water. They posed for several photos, the magnificent sunset behind them, and for a brief moment, Sarah allowed herself to relax and enjoy this rare moment of connection with her husband. "This is nice," David said as he put his phone away. "With one child, we hardly ever get moments just for us. But now, with Adam looking after Lily, sometimes we can have little breaks like this." Sarah nodded, though a flicker of unease remained. "It is nice," she agreed. "I just need to get used to sharing the responsibility. It's been just me and you with Lily for so long." David smiled, slipping an arm around her waist. "Let's take a short walk along the beach while we're here. The food won't arrive for a while yet, and the kids are fine." Though part of her wanted to return to the table immediately, Sarah couldn't deny that the opportunity for a quiet moment with David was tempting. Between work, parenting, and the logistics of this vacation, they'd had precious little time just for themselves. "Just a short one," she agreed. They strolled along the water's edge, the warm tropical breeze caressing their skin as they talked about their plans for the remainder of their vacation and how they would integrate Adam into their lives back home in the States. Before long, the indigo twilight had deepened, and the restaurant's lights glowed more prominently against the darkening sky. "We should head back now," Sarah said, suddenly anxious about the time that had passed. "Our food must be arriving soon." David checked his watch and nodded. They made their way back to the restaurant, but as they approached their table, Sarah's heart sank. Adam and Lily were gone. "Maybe they went to the restroom again," David suggested, noticing her expression. Sarah scanned the restaurant frantically. "Both of them, without telling us." They asked the server who had taken their order if he had seen the children, but he shook his head, explaining in limited English that he had brought their appetizers but found no one at the table. The food sat untouched, growing cold in the evening air. Panic began to rise in Sarah's chest. We need to find them now, she said, her voice trembling slightly. David nodded, his own concern evident. You check inside the restaurant. I'll look around the beach club area. Sarah rushed inside, checking the restrooms and every corner of the restaurant, but found no sign of Adam or Lily. Returning outside, she spotted David near the beach, shaking his head to indicate he hadn't found them either. Fear gripping her heart, Sarah's eyes darted around the area, searching for any clue, any sign of her children. That's when she noticed the old coconut vendor in the distance, now packing up his stand for the night, collecting empty coconut shells and discarding them in a trash bin near the edge of the beach. On instinct, Sarah rushed toward him, David following close behind. "Excuse me," she called out as she approached, slightly breathless. "My daughter, small girl, pink dress, and my son, the dwarf boy, have you seen them?" The old man looked at her blankly for a moment, clearly not understanding her rapid English. Sarah slowed down, pointing to her waist to indicate a child's height, then lower to show Adam's stature. "Little girl," she said, making a rocking motion with her arms as if holding a baby. "Boy small." She held her hand at about Adam's height. Recognition dawned in the man's weathered face. He pointed toward the nearby Art Market Street that ran perpendicular to the beach, his expression suddenly urgent. He gripped Sarah's arm with surprising strength for his age, his eyes intense as he spoke. "No boy. Man. Not good. Here before." This time, something in his tone, in the desperate look in his eyes, made the meaning click in Sarah's mind. He wasn't saying that dwarfs were bad luck or cursed. He was trying to tell her that Adam wasn't a boy at all, but a man, a dangerous one who had been here before. "Are you saying he's not a child? He's an adult?" Sarah asked, pointing in the direction the man had indicated and making a gesture suggesting height, then pointing to herself to indicate an adult. The old man nodded vigorously, his expression grave. "Man. Bad man. Here before." A cold feeling settled in Sarah's stomach as pieces began falling into place. Adam's occasional deeper voice, his mature facial features she had attributed to his condition, his strange confidence in handling Lily, the way he had taken her away multiple times. "Thank you," she said to the old man, squeezing his hand in gratitude. "Thank you for trying to warn me." She turned to David, her face pale. "He's been trying to tell me since this morning. Adam isn't a boy. He's a man, a grown man pretending to be a child, and he's taken Lily." David's expression hardened, his jaw clenching. "The art market. Let's go now." They ran in the direction the coconut seller had pointed, toward the crowded street filled with vendors selling local crafts, clothing, and souvenirs. The market was bustling with tourists and locals alike, the narrow pathway congested with people moving shoulder to shoulder between the colorful stalls. "Lily," Sarah called out, her eyes scanning the crowd desperately. "Adam." But her voice was swallowed by the ambient noise. Music playing from various stalls, vendors calling out to potential customers, the general hum of conversation. "We should split up," David suggested, his voice tight with worry. "Cover more ground." Sarah shook her head firmly. "No, we stay together. If we find them, we'll need both of us." They pushed through the crowd, apologizing as they went, their eyes constantly moving, searching for a flash of pink fabric or the distinctive silhouette of a person with dwarfism. Just as Sarah was about to suggest calling the local police, she heard it, a familiar cry that stood out from the market's cacophony, a sound she would recognize anywhere. Lily's distinctive wail. "David, listen," she gasped, grabbing his arm. "That's Lily." They both froze, straining to hear over the noise. The cry came again, fainter this time, but unmistakable. "This way," David said, pulling Sarah toward a narrow alley that branched off from the main market street. As they moved away from the crowd, the sound became clearer. They followed it down the alley, which was poorly lit and smelled of garbage and sea salt. Sarah's heart hammered in her chest, fear and determination propelling her forward despite the ominous surroundings. And then, in the dim light, they saw them. Lily in her pink dress, walking in front of Adam, her small hand gripped tightly in his. They appeared to be heading toward a shadowy figure waiting at the far end of the alley. David didn't hesitate. With a burst of speed that surprised even Sarah, He closed the distance between them and Adam in seconds. Moving with the precision of an athlete, he grabbed the back of Adam's collar and yanked him backward, lifting him off his feet. Adam let out a startled yelp, losing his grip on Lily's hand. The toddler stumbled forward, momentarily confused by the sudden commotion. "Lily!" Sarah cried, rushing past David to scoop up her daughter. Lily immediately burst into tears, burying her face in her mother's neck and clinging to her with desperate strength. At the sound of the confrontation, the shadowy figure at the end of the alley turned and ran. In the brief moment before he disappeared around a corner, David caught a glimpse of his features. A man wearing cheap Oakley sunglasses despite the evening hour, with what looked like a wolf or dog tattoo visible on the side of his neck. Meanwhile, Adam, or whoever he really was thrashing in David's grip, trying to break free. Despite his small stature, he fought with surprising strength, his movements those of a trained adult rather than a frightened child. "Let me go!" he shouted, his voice now completely different, deep, commanding, with no trace of the high-pitched, childlike tone he had been using. "You don't know what you're doing." David tightened his grip, his face a mask of fury. "I know exactly what I'm doing, you sick bastard." Adam continued to struggle, attempting to kick at David's legs, but the height difference made his efforts largely ineffective. Sarah backed away, holding Lily protectively as she pulled out her phone with her free hand. "I'm calling the police," she said, her voice shaking but resolute. "No, wait." Adam's tone changed again, becoming placating. "This is all a misunderstanding. I was just taking Lily for a walk because she was getting bored at the restaurant. At night, down a dark alley?" David spat, his grip unwavering. "And who was that man waiting for you?" "I don't know what you're talking about," Adam insisted. "There was no one there. I was just exploring the area with Lily." Just as Sarah was about to dial the emergency number, the sound of police sirens cut through the night air. Within moments, 2 police officers appeared at the entrance to the alley, flashlights scanning the area. "Over here," David called out. "Help us." The officers approached cautiously, hands on their holsters. One of them spoke in Indonesian, clearly asking what was happening. "English?" Sarah asked desperately. "Do you speak English?" The younger of the 2 officers nodded. "Yes, some. What's the problem here?" Sarah pointed at Adam, who had momentarily ceased his struggling in the presence of law enforcement. This person pretended to be a child with dwarfism. "We adopted him from an orphanage, but he's actually an adult. He took our daughter without permission and was bringing her to meet someone in this alley." The officer frowned, looking skeptical as he observed Adam's small stature. He said something to his partner in Indonesian, who shrugged in response. "He's not a child," David insisted. "Listen to his voice." "Tell them," he demanded, giving Adam a shake. Adam remained silent, his eyes calculating as he assessed the situation. The officers approached closer, one training his flashlight directly on Adam's face. In the harsh beam, the mature features that Sarah had noticed earlier were more pronounced. The subtle lines around his eyes, the shadow of facial hair that number 13-year-old would have, the hardness in his gaze that belied years of experience beyond childhood. "We saw him meeting someone," Sarah added desperately. "A man with sunglasses and a tattoo on his neck. He ran when we appeared." At the mention of the tattoo, the officers exchanged a glance, and their demeanor changed. The older officer spoke rapidly into his radio, while the younger one drew his weapon, though he kept it pointed at the ground. "You will all come station," he said firmly. "We need statements." More sirens wailed in the distance, growing louder. Adam's expression darkened as he realized more officers were on the way. He made one last desperate attempt to break free, twisting violently in David's grip. "Let me go," he snarled, all pretense of being a child completely abandoned, his voice now fully adult. The officers responded immediately to this change, moving forward to restrain Adam. As they did, more police arrived, flooding the alley with light and sound. Among them was a plainclothed detective who appeared to be in charge, barking orders in Indonesian. As the officers handcuffed Adam, David finally released his grip, stepping back to join Sarah and Lily. The toddler was still crying softly, her face pressed against her mother's shoulder. "Is she hurt?" David asked quietly, gently stroking Lily's back. Sarah shook her head. I don't think so. Just scared. They watched as the police secured Adam, who had given up fighting and now stood silent, his expression unreadable in the chaotic light of flashlights and police vehicles. The detective approached them, his English better than the other officers. We will need you to come to the station, he said, to give statements. But first, tell me, how did you come to be with this person? Sarah explained briefly about the orphanage on Bellong, the adoption process, and the events of the day leading up to the alley confrontation. As she spoke, the detective's expression grew increasingly grim. We have had reports, he said when she finished, of similar incidents. Children approached by strangers, sometimes disappearing. We will need all details about this orphanage. He gestured to one of the patrol cars. Please come with us to the station. We will have interpreters there, and you can give full statements. Your daughter will be safe. David nodded, putting a protective arm around Sarah and Lily as they were led to the waiting police car. As they passed Adam being loaded into a different vehicle, Sarah caught his eye. The look he gave her was chilling. Not anger or fear, but a cold, calculating appraisal, as if he were already planning his next move. In that moment, Sarah knew with absolute certainty that they had narrowly escaped something truly horrific. She clutched Lily tighter, silently vowing never to let down her guard again when it came to her daughter's safety. The police station was a bustling hive of activity despite the late hour. Officers moved purposefully through the fluorescent-lit halls, while telephones rang continuously in the background. The Carters were ushered into an interview room, a stark space with bare walls, a simple table, and 4 chairs. Sarah kept Lily on her lap, the toddler finally calm but still clutching her mother's shirt with tiny, determined fists. David sat close beside them, his face etched with a mixture of anger and residual fear. A female officer brought them water and assured them in broken English that they would not have to wait long. True to her word, within minutes the door opened again to admit the detective they had met at the scene, along with a young woman who introduced herself as an interpreter. My name is Detective Adi Santoso, the man said, sitting across from them. I apologize for this difficult situation. We will try to make this process as smooth as possible for you and your daughter. The interpreter, Dewey, sat beside him, notebook ready. She smiled reassuringly at them, her manner calm and professional. Please tell us everything from the beginning, Detective Santoso requested. How did you meet this person who called himself Adam? Julia and Michael took turns explaining how they had first visited the Harapan orphanage 3 days ago, how they had met Nissa and spent time with Adam, believing him to be a 13-year-old orphan with dwarfism. We thought we were doing something good, Sarah said, her voice breaking slightly. We wanted to give a home to a child who needed one, a sibling for Lily. The detective nodded sympathetically, but continued his questioning. And what made you suspicious? When did you first notice something might be wrong? Sarah described the coconut vendor's warnings, Adam's occasional slips into a deeper voice, the bathroom incidents, and a strange behavior at the restaurant. As she spoke, Detective Santoso took detailed notes, occasionally exchanging words with another officer who had entered the room. What was he doing with Lily when you found them in the alley? The detective asked, his tone careful but direct. He was holding her hand, David replied, his jaw tight, leading her towards someone waiting at the end of the alley. A man with sunglasses and a wolf or dog tattoo on his neck. At this description, Detective Santoso and the other officer exchanged significant glances. And what happened when you confronted him? The detective continued. David described grabbing Adam and the subsequent struggle, how the other man had fled, and how Adam's voice had completely changed when he was caught. I want to know what he did to my daughter, Sarah interjected, her voice trembling with barely contained emotion. When he took her to the bathroom at the department store, when he had her in the bathtub at our villa, what did he do to her? Detective Santoso's expression softened with understanding. We will have a child specialist examine her, with your permission, of course. It would be best to know if any inappropriate contact occurred. Sarah nodded, tears welling in her eyes at the thought. David put his arm around her shoulders, his own eyes damp. As the questioning continued, the door opened again, and an officer handed Detective Santoso a file. He reviewed it quickly, his expression hardening. "The person you knew as Adam has been identified," he announced, turning the file so they could see a mugshot. "His real name is Joshua R. Arbin. He is now 30 years old, from the Netherlands, and he is wanted in several countries for crimes involving children." Sarah stared at the photograph. A man with sharp features and cold eyes, his hair cropped short. Despite the difference in styling and the absence of the innocent expression Adam had cultivated, she could see it was undeniably the same person. "He has admitted to working with the orphanage," Detective Santoso continued. "We have officers there now, conducting a raid. It appears this orphanage may be a front for a human trafficking operation." "And Nissa?" David asked, his voice hoarse. "Nissa Rahmani is not her real name," the detective replied. "She has been identified as Fatima Al-Jabri, wanted in connection with trafficking cases in Thailand, Malaysia, and Indonesia. She was not on the premises when our officers arrived, but we have issued an alert for her arrest." Sarah felt physically ill. What would have happened to Lily if we hadn't found them in time? The detective hesitated, clearly reluctant to spell out the horrors that might have befallen their daughter. Based on similar cases, children taken in this manner are typically transported out of the country within hours. They are given false documentation and sold. David made a sound somewhere between a groan and a growl, his hands clenching into fists. Sarah hugged Lily tighter, unable to process the full horror of what might have been. "We need to question Adam, Joshua, further," Detective Santoso said. "But based on his initial statements and his known history, we believe he works as what we call a spotter. He identifies potential targets, typically foreign children whose disappearance might be attributed to accidents while on vacation in unfamiliar terrain, and gains access to them through various means, like pretending to be an orphan with a disability." "His condition," Sarah said bitterly. "Exactly," the detective confirmed. "His condition makes him uniquely suited for this role. He can pass as a child in certain contexts, gaining sympathy and trust. He has used this disguise in multiple countries across Southeast Asia." The detective turned his tablet around to show them a series of photographs. Joshua in various settings, sometimes alone, sometimes with different families. In each, he was dressed and styled to appear as a child or young teenager. "These are from security cameras and social media posts we've gathered. He's been operating for at least 5 years that we know of." Sarah studied the images, a chill running through her as she recognized the same innocent expression Adam had worn with them, the same practiced vulnerability in his posture when interacting with adults. "Can I ask him something?" she suddenly demanded, her voice hard with anger. "I want to know what he did to my daughter when they were alone." Detective Santoso considered the request, then nodded slowly. "I can arrange that, but he has been uncooperative. I cannot promise he will answer truthfully or at all." "I need to try," Sarah insisted. "Very well. Wait here." The detective left, returning several minutes later with news that Joshua had been moved to an interrogation room where they could speak with him briefly. "I'll stay here with Lily," David offered, taking the toddler from Sarah's arms. "She doesn't need to see him again." Sarah nodded gratefully and followed Detective Santoso down a corridor to another room. Through a window in the door, she could see Joshua seated at a table, his hands cuffed in front of him. Without the childlike demeanor he had affected, he looked completely different, his posture straight, his face set in hard lines, his eyes cold and calculating. Taking a deep breath, Sarah entered the room, the detective close behind her. Joshua looked up, a flicker of surprise crossing his face before settling into a smirk. "Come to visit, Mrs. Carter? Or should I call you Sarah, now that we don't need to pretend anymore?" His voice was fully adult, with a slight European accent she hadn't detected before. The transformation was so complete that Sarah momentarily struggled to reconcile this man with the boy she had thought she was adopting just hours ago. "What did you do to my daughter?" she asked directly, her voice barely controlled. Joshua watched her with a predatory sort of interest. "Worried, are you? You should be. Parents these days are so careless, leaving their children with people they barely know. Answer her question." Detective Santoso ordered sharply. Joshua leaned back in his chair as much as his restraints would allow. "I did my job," he said simply. I identified a suitable target, gained access, and was preparing for extraction when you so rudely interrupted. Your job being child trafficking? Sarah spat. He shrugged, unbothered by her disgust. There's a market. Prime Anna. What did you do to Lily when you took her to the bathroom? When you had her in the bathtub? Sarah pressed, her hands gripping the edge of the table to steady herself. Joshua's eyes gleamed with malice. It's better that you don't know the truth, he said coldly. You wouldn't be strong enough to handle it. David's voice suddenly came from behind Sarah. You sick bastard. She turned to see her husband lunging forward, fist raised. Detective Santoso and another officer quickly intervened, holding David back. Don't, the detective warned. He wants to provoke you. This will not help your daughter. David struggled against their restraint, his face contorted with rage. That man bathed with my child. He touched my daughter. I won't let him get away with it. He will not. Detective Santoso assured him firmly. We have enough evidence to ensure he faces the maximum penalty. But you must control yourself. Slowly, David's resistance subsided, though the fury in his eyes remained undiminished. Joshua watched the scene with detached amusement. Such passion, he commented. What a shame it comes too late to protect your child properly. Take them out. Detective Santoso ordered the other officer, who promptly escorted Sarah and David from the room. In the hallway, Sarah collapsed against David, her composure finally breaking. What if he hurt her? What if he did something terrible, and she can't even tell us? David held her tightly, his own tears falling freely now. We'll get her checked by doctors. We'll get her whatever help she needs. But she's safe now. We found her in time. That's what matters. Detective Santoso joined them a moment later. I apologize, he said sincerely. He is manipulating you, trying to cause maximum distress. This is typical of his profile. We will have a female officer accompany you to the hospital where Lily can be examined properly. Sarah nodded, unable to speak through her tears. Come, the detective said gently. Let us return to the other room where your daughter is waiting. Then we will arrange transportation to the hospital. As they walked back, Sarah felt a complex mixture of emotions. Profound relief that they had found Lily in time, crushing guilt that they had been so easily deceived, and simmering anger at the predator who had infiltrated their family with such calculated precision. But above all, there was an overwhelming determination to do whatever it took to ensure Lily recovered from this ordeal, and that the man responsible would never have the opportunity to harm another child again. The next few hours passed in a blur of medical examinations, additional police statements, and exhausted tears. The local hospital, though small, had a doctor who specialized in pediatric care and spoke excellent English. After a thorough but gentle examination, she delivered the news Sarah and David had been desperately hoping to hear. There was no evidence of physical abuse. Your daughter appears physically unharmed, the doctor explained, her kind eyes providing additional reassurance. She may experience some emotional distress from the ordeal, but children her age are remarkably resilient, especially with loving, supportive parents. The relief that washed over them was indescribable. David broke down completely while Sarah held Lily close, whispering thanks to whatever powers had protected her daughter from the worst possibilities. By the time they returned to the police station, it was nearly midnight. Lily had fallen asleep in her mother's arms, emotionally exhausted from the day's events. Detective Santoso met them in a quieter room, away from the bustle of the main station. A different interpreter joined them, along with two other officers. We have new information, the detective began once they were settled. The team we sent to the orphanage has completed their initial investigation. He placed several photographs on the table. Images of rooms hidden behind false walls, makeshift holding areas with small beds, and a sophisticated document forgery operation. The Harapan orphanage was, as we suspected, a front for a human trafficking network. Some children that were genuinely orphans or abandoned, kept as cover for their real operations, but many were in transit, being prepared for transport to buyers in various countries. Sarah stared at the images, horror rendering her momentarily speechless. And Nissa Ramani is not her real name, the detective replied. She has been identified as Fatima Al-Jabri, wanted in connection with trafficking cases in Thailand, Malaysia, and Indonesia. She was not on the premises when our officers arrived, but we have issued an alert for her arrest. What about the other man? David asked. The one in the alley with the tattoo? We are still searching for him, but based on Joshua's reluctant statements in our database, we believe he is Karel van Hout, another Dutch national with connections to international trafficking networks. The tattoo matches descriptions we have on file. The detective opened a folder and extracted a printout of a mug shot. A hard-faced man with close-cropped hair and cold eyes. This is from an arrest in Malaysia 3 years ago. Does this match the man you saw? David studied the photograph and nodded grimly. That's him. Older now, but definitely the same man. Detective Santoso made a note. Van Hout specializes in document forgery and transport logistics. If he was meeting Joshua in that alley, it was likely to take possession of your daughter and begin the process of moving her out of the country. Sarah closed her eyes, trying to block out the mental image of her daughter being taken away by these men. How could we have been so blind? She whispered. Do not blame yourselves, the detective said firmly. These people are professionals. They have refined their methods over years. The false orphanage, the adoption story, the medical condition that explains unusual behavior or appearance. It is a sophisticated operation designed to exploit the compassion of good people. He paused, allowing the interpreter to catch up, then continued. We have been tracking this network for some time, but they are careful, moving frequently, and changing identities. Your experience, though traumatic, has provided us with valuable information that may help dismantle their operation more broadly. What will happen to Joshua now? David asked. He will remain in custody here while we process extradition requests. He's wanted in the Netherlands for similar crimes, as well as in Malaysia, where he jumped bail before his trial. Given the evidence and his prior history, he will likely face a lengthy prison sentence, possibly life. The detective's phone buzzed. He checked it, and his expression brightened slightly. Good news. Our officers have located the coconut vendor who warned you. His name is Pak Haji, and he has agreed to give a statement. It appears he recognized Joshua from a previous incident on the island. A child went missing last year after being seen with a small man. Pak Haji tried to warn the family then as well, but they didn't understand him. The child was never found. Sarah's heart ached for that unknown family and their lost child. Please tell him thank you from us, she said. Without his warnings, I might not have become suspicious in time. The detective nodded. We will. His testimony will be valuable in building our case. A female officer entered with fresh coffee for everyone and a blanket for Lily, who continued to sleep peacefully, oblivious to the darkness they were discussing. There is one more thing, Detective Santoso said after taking a sip of his coffee. We found something during the search of Joshua's belongings at the villa. He hesitated, seemingly unsure how to proceed. What is it? Sarah pressed, her anxiety rising again. The detective reached into his folder and withdrew several photographs. These were taken today at various locations: the beach club, the department store, the villa. Sarah and David leaned forward to examine the images. They showed Lily playing in the sand, walking in the store, sleeping on the bed, all taken without their knowledge or consent. These were being sent to Van Hout, the detective explained, documenting the target before acquisition. There were also notes about your movements, the villa layout, and your planned departure date. Sarah felt violated to her core. The idea that Joshua had been cataloging her daughter, planning her abduction with such cold precision, made her physically ill. We also found this, the detective added, showing them one final image on his tablet. It was a messaging app conversation in Dutch, partially translated with notes from the police interpreter. The exchange was between Joshua and someone identified only as K, presumably Karel van Hout. The messages discussed merchandise acquisition, extraction timing, and transport routes. The final message, sent just before they went to dinner, included the words, tonight. Beach restaurant. Parents distracted. Easy grab. David's face paled as he read the translated conversation. He planned it all along. Getting us to leave them alone at the restaurant was deliberate. Yes, the detective confirmed. From his statement, it appears that was the opportunity they had been waiting for. The original plan was to wait until closer to your departure date, but something changed their timeline. We're still investigating what prompted the acceleration. Sarah remembered how Adam, Joshua, had encouraged them to take time alone at the sunset to enjoy the moment. How easily they had been manipulated into creating the perfect opportunity for him to take Lily. "What happens now?" she asked, feeling utterly drained. "We will need you to remain in Belong for a few more days to complete the investigation and formal statements," Detective Santoso explained. "After that, you will be free to return home. We can arrange for consular support from your embassy if needed." David nodded, running a hand through his hair. "And the adoption papers we signed, they were all fake, I assume?" "Yes, completely fraudulent. You have no legal ties to Joshua, and the entire transaction was invalid. We will provide documentation explaining the situation for your authorities back home." The detective closed his folder and looked at them with genuine sympathy. "It has been a very difficult day for your family. We have arranged accommodation for you tonight at a hotel near the station, with police protection. Tomorrow, when you're all rested, we can continue with the formal statements." Sarah and David thanked him, too exhausted to express the full depth of their gratitude for the police's swift action and compassionate handling of the situation. As they prepared to leave for the hotel, Detective Santoso added one final thought. "There is one positive outcome from this terrible experience. Your actions tonight may have saved many other children. The information we have gathered will help us dismantle a significant trafficking operation. You should take some comfort in that." Sarah looked down at Lily's sleeping face, peaceful in her innocence despite the danger she had been in. "I just want to make sure she's safe," she whispered, "that no one can ever hurt her like this again. We will do everything in our power to ensure that," the detective promised, "and to bring all responsible parties to justice." As they were escorted to the waiting police car, Sarah caught a glimpse through a window of Joshua being led down a corridor in handcuffs. Their eyes met briefly across the distance, and what she saw in his gaze chilled her to the bone. Not remorse or fear, but frustration and calculation, as if he were merely annoyed at being caught so soon and was already formulating his next move. In that moment, Sarah knew that whatever punishment the legal system imposed on him would never seem sufficient for the nightmare he had nearly inflicted on her family. But at least he was in custody, unable to harm another child. And for now, that would have to be enough. Morning sunlight streamed through the curtains of the hotel room, casting a warm glow across the simple but clean accommodations the police had arranged for them. Lily was already awake, playing quietly with a stuffed elephant a kind female officer had given her the night before. The sight of her daughter engaged in such normal, innocent play brought tears to Sarah's eyes. David emerged from the bathroom, freshly showered but still bearing the shadows of exhaustion under his eyes. "How are you feeling?" he asked softly, sitting beside her on the bed. "I don't know," Sarah admitted, grateful, terrified, angry all at once. David took her hand, his grip firm and reassuring. "I feel the same. I keep thinking about what could have happened if we hadn't found them in time." "But we did," Sarah said, forcing herself to focus on this one crucial fact. "We found her. She's safe." They watched Lily playing, her little world already seeming to right itself, even as theirs had been so profoundly shaken. Children's resilience was both heartbreaking and miraculous. A knock at the door announced the arrival of breakfast, brought by a police officer who would also escort them back to the station later for further questioning. As they ate, David and Sarah discussed what lay ahead, the remaining days in Indonesia, the flight home, and the long process of healing that would follow. "We were trying to bypass the proper adoption channels," David said, voicing the regret that had been consuming him since the previous night. "We thought we'd found a shortcut to expanding our family, and we nearly lost everything in the process." Sarah nodded, understanding his guilt because she shared it. "We wanted so badly to give Lily a sibling to add to our family that we ignored all the red flags. When the coconut seller tried to warn me, when Lily cried every time Adam touched her, She was trying to tell us in the only way she could. We'll never make that mistake again, David promised, his voice firm with conviction. If we do adopt in the future, it will be through proper legal channels, no matter how long it takes. And if it doesn't happen, Sarah added, that's okay too. Having Lily is enough. Her safety and happiness come first. There was another knock at the door. David opened it to find Detective Santoso looking somewhat more rested than the previous night. Good morning, he greeted them. I hope you managed to get some sleep. I have some updates for you, if you're ready. They invited him in, and he took a seat at the small table, declining their offer of coffee. First, I wanted to let you know that Joshua Arbin is being charged with multiple offenses: attempted kidnapping, identity fraud, conspiracy to commit human trafficking, and several others. Given his history and the evidence against him, he will likely face the maximum sentence. What about the orphanage? Sarah asked. And the others involved? We have arrested 4 staff members who were complicit in the operation. Nissa, or Fatima, remains at large, but we have alerts at all airports and seaports. As for Karel Van Hout, we have identified his hotel room and found evidence there, but he appears to have fled. International police have been notified. David's jaw tightened at the news that one of the conspirators had escaped, but he said nothing. The investigation is ongoing, Detective Santoso continued, but I wanted to personally thank you both for your cooperation and courage. Your testimonies will be crucial in ensuring that these individuals face justice. We just want to make sure they can never do this to another family, Sarah said quietly. The detective nodded, understanding in his eyes. There's one more thing. Pak Haji, the coconut vendor, asked me to give you this. He handed Sarah a small package wrapped in simple brown paper. She unwrapped it carefully to find a beautifully carved wooden figure of a mother holding a child. He says it is a traditional protective charm for safe journey home. Sarah clutched the carving, deeply moved by the gesture from a man who had tried so hard to protect her family despite having no connection to them beyond basic human compassion. Please tell him thank you, she said, her voice thick with emotion, and that I'll treasure this always. I will, the detective promised. He also wants you to know that he will be a witness in the case. He says no more families should suffer. After the detective left, promising to return later to escort them to the station for final statements, Sarah and David prepared for the day ahead. As Sarah helped Lily dress, she marveled at her daughter's apparent recovery. Children lived so completely in the present moment, a gift that adults, with their capacity for dwelling on the past and worrying about the future, often lost. We need to learn from her, Sarah said softly as they watched Lily singing to herself while arranging her toys on the bed. To focus on right now, on being together and safe. David nodded, wrapping an arm around her shoulders. And to trust our instincts more. You sensed something was wrong almost from the beginning. We both ignored signs we should have heeded, Sarah countered. But we won't make that mistake again, not with Lily's safety at stake. For the remainder of their time in Indonesia, their vacation would be transformed into something entirely different. A series of police statements, possible court appearances, and the careful rebuilding of their sense of security. But they would face it together, strengthened by the knowledge of how close they had come to losing everything and how fortunate they had been to escape the trap that had been so carefully set for them. As they prepared to leave for the police station, Sarah tucked the wooden carving from Pak Haji in her bag, feeling a connection to this place and its people that was entirely different from what she had anticipated when they first arrived as tourists. There had been darkness and danger, yes, but also kindness, courage, and compassion from strangers who had helped them when it mattered most. When we go home, she said to David as he held the door open for her and Lily, I want to find a way to help other families avoid what we went through. Maybe support organizations that fight against trafficking or advocate for better international adoption protocols. David nodded, his expression solemn but determined. We'll do it together. Something good has to come from this. As they stepped out into the bright Indonesian sunshine, Sarah held Lily a little closer, her heart filled with gratitude for this second chance. They had come to this beautiful country seeking to expand their family. And while that hadn't happened the way they planned, they would return home with something perhaps more valuable, a deeper appreciation for what they already had, and a renewed commitment to protecting it with everything they had. And somewhere in the busy police station behind them, a man who had preyed on their compassion and nearly stolen their child waited to face justice. It wouldn't undo the trauma or erase the nightmares that would likely haunt them for years to come. But it was a start, a first step toward healing and toward ensuring that other families might be spared the ordeal they had endured. Thank you for reading this story. If you enjoyed it, please consider subscribing to the channel for more captivating tales. Your support helps us continue to share these stories with the world.